Want to talk about Superman? Let's talk about Superman. Look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's me, Nate Shapiro, with another episode of Back Issues. I know that we have Superman releasing in theaters July 11th, and I thought now would be a perfect time to do a little video about why I love Superman. I'll admit, I've become a little bit of a comic book movie cynic in the last 10 years or so, but I'm cautiously optimistic about this one. Superman is one of my favorite characters in the comics, which is odd given that it's a little bit of a break from the other characters that I seem to obsess about, all the weirdos and psychopaths, Batman, The Question, Sentry, Moon Knight, a little break from the oddballs like Red Tornado and the X-Men. But I do love Superman. The thing that I really love about Superman is the dichotomy that he has with his arch nemesis Lex Luthor. I think that they have a very interesting adversarial relationship. Superman sees humanity as the example. Superman sees humanity as the way that he should be, the guidebook for how to behave on this planet and as a member of society and as someone who wields as much power as he does. Naive or not, Superman sees the best in us, and that is his reason and his example to follow, and the reason that he uses his powers responsibly. Now, I think the interpretation of he's Jesus and is a god with unchecked power is kind of trite. However, I do like the idea that he is a god who strives and struggles to play human, not someone who positions himself as a god. He doesn't see himself as a savior, he doesn't position himself as a savior, but he sees himself as a human with a duty to his fellow man. And that duty, I said duty, dictates him to use the abilities that he knows he has to do the right thing as he thinks most humans would do. The burden of power rests with Superman to use that power responsibly. Am I getting dangerously close to a Spider-Man lecture? On the other hand, you have someone like Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is, in my opinion, the best a man can be in the worst possible way. Every earthly advantage, every kind of earthly mortal superpower, so to speak, he has. Wealth, intelligence, influence, power. Lex has everything that a human being could possibly achieve. Much like Superman, the power that Lex Luthor has represents this expectation to live up to. Whereas Superman's expectation is to use that power for the benefit of mankind, Lex Luthor's expectation is to feel superior to everybody on the planet. Remember how I said Superman was a god playing human? Well, Lex Luthor is a human playing god. That's what I find to be the stark divide between these characters. You have someone with not much of the spoils of the earth, but power beyond human comprehension. And then you have someone with every spoil that the earth could possibly give you, and yet he feels it's not enough because there's someone above him that can fly. Lex is a textbook narcissist, and narcissists have a habit of fixating. Again, I don't have a psych degree, but I've dealt with plenty of narcissists in my time, and I've observed what they do. Narcissists tend to get really hung up on people that they feel have wronged them, or people that they feel stand in their way in any way, shape, or form. If you watch the Inkpound Comics video that I appeared in where I'm dressed as Mr. Sinister talking about Dr. Doom, talking about how Dr. Doom's hubris keeps him from being the smartest person on the planet, it's similar to that. Lex, with all of his power and influence, could really be a force for good, but his ego stands in the way of that. This streak of narcissism and almost inferiority complex that Lex has by Superman's mere existence is what keeps him from exhibiting the best qualities that he could produce. Rather than focus his wealth and influence on things that could help benefit society, Lex Luthor feels wronged by Superman's very existence and spends all of his time consumed in how to bring down someone who he perceives as better than him, but who cannot possibly be better than him, because I'm the best that a man can be. I have everything that a man could possibly have. I have built myself up to be the most that a human being can be, but I can't reconcile all of this because there's some jackass in a cape who can fly. Superman is a man of modest means. He's from Kansas. He grew up on a farm, but he has powers unlike anything you could imagine. Lex Luthor, on the other hand, has everything that a human being could possibly have, and yet despite all this, it's not enough, because he's seen that there's more, and he has to either grab that power for himself, which he knows that he can't because it's genetically gifted to Superman, or show that he is better than it in some way or another. I find it odd in a way that Superman, despite having all of his power, really just wants to be like us. Lex Luthor, on the other hand, while one of us, while arguably the best of us by material standards, would give anything to be Superman. The best exploration in Lex Luthor's ego, I think, comes in Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman. There's a scene where Superman is interviewing Lex in prison, because in this story, Lex is about to be put on death row. While Clark is supposed to be interviewing Lex about himself, Lex just keeps droning on about Superman. And he keeps saying things like, "You feel that, Kent? Real muscle, not the gift of alien genetics. Gee, Kent, don't you hate Superman too? Because next to him, you're just a parody of a man." Fully not recognizing the irony of it all, but, you know. Next to Superman, even Lex Luthor's strength is unrecognized. This idea that there is something standing in the way of his greatness is a trait that is found in a lot of narcissists who tend to make enemies for themselves, just like Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom is constantly shaking his fist at the universe, cursing, "Richards!" Because if a narcissist thinks that someone is outdoing them in any way, they will not let it go. They won't stop fixating on the people that they feel have wronged them, sometimes by virtue of just existing, especially in the case of Lex Luthor and even Dr. Doom. The interesting thing about Lex's hubris in that All-Star Superman scene is that he doesn't have the ability to recognize that Clark Kent is Superman, despite being that close to him. But, you know, that's just a funny side effect of the you don't see something where you don't expect to see it. Superman has a line to Lex Luthor later in All-Star Superman saying, "You could have saved the world whenever you wanted." And that's true. With Lex's endless amount of resources, endless amount of earthly power that he wields, he really could have done a lot to help the world. But because that there was someone existing above him in a cape who could do things that he couldn't, Lex just couldn't get out of his own way. This narcissistic trait of Lex Luthor's is almost a kind of paralyzer, whereas Lex Luthor could do a lot to help the world. Lex Luthor could do a lot to distribute resources and end hunger and wars and, hell, apartheid, maybe, I don't know. A lot of narcissists see themselves as having some great purpose or potential or goal, but usually when there is someone that's very existence shows them up, they can't see through the glasses clearly. There's a stain on the lenses that is just obstructing their view, and it may be small or it may be big, but they can't get rid of it. Lex is very much like that, obsessed with the idea of playing God, that when there's someone who he perceives to be an actual God, he can't get over it, which is just hilarious to Superman because he's like, "Lex, this is a responsibility. This isn't something I want. This is something that I have to do. I want to be like you. I want to see humanity for the best that it is, and I want to imitate that in a way." Superman from the skies looks down and wants to be one of us. Lex looks to the skies and wants to be a god. And the fact that there is a godlike being in existence, Lex will never let it go. The major factor in Lex and Superman's relationship is jealousy. Lex envies Superman's ability to do what he does. In a lot of adaptations of Superman lore, Lex goes to Superman and has these long-winded rants about, "You have all this power and you squander it. Do you know what you could do if you had this power? Do you know what I would do if I had your kind of power?" And there's even a line in Smallville where, you know, in this world, Lex and Clark know who the other is, and Lex goes, "It pisses me off that you didn't even want it, Clark." Lex will always be driven to show up Superman from this standpoint of jealousy. How you could have the power of a god when I'm the one on Earth who's supposed to be a god. Lex's entire worldview was shattered the day that Superman emerged. In many adaptations of Superman media, and in some of the, Superman origin stories that they've printed in the comics, I know that they've gone over Superman's origin story a countless amount of times, but Superman's emergence always seems to shake Lex from this comfortability that he has in the world, because Lex has gone most of his life making a self-made man out of himself that is the best that a man could possibly have. But magically, some guy shows up in a cape, and in Lex's mind, all that work that he has done to perfect himself is undone. done because Superman's existence raises the bar of power, or raises the bar of how much a man has to measure up, or raises the bar of expectations in general that Lex feels like he has to meet. And Lex deep down knows that that level of expectation is impossible to achieve because he's not a superpowered alien. So what does he do? Well, I've got to destroy this man, of course. I've got to wipe this guy off the face of the planet because his existence is a challenge to my status, my power, my masculinity, my very identity as a human being who thinks he has everything. Meanwhile, Superman is someone who has those powers. He doesn't value money. He doesn't value exorbitant wealth or the privilege, the massive amount of social privilege that Lex Luthor exhibits despite being a criminal. Gee, it sure is great that only in the realm of fiction and comic books could a super wealthy criminal obtain a massive amount of social privilege. Wink, wink. But while Lex has all earthly means and no superpowers, he's constantly striving for more. Superman doesn't really want for much. The only thing that Superman really wants for is time with his family and for the world to be safe. In a way, I think that Superman envies us. Superman spends so much time emulating how it is to be human by interacting with us and trying to save us and work for the betterment of us. You can't help but feel like he might envy us a little bit, the same way that Lex envies Superman's power. That's about all I've got for you right now. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you can add me to your pull box. I'll pull your box, if you know what I'm saying. I don't know what that means. But I'm Nate Shapiro. Thank you for coming to Back Issues. Be sure to check out my band, Nox Sinister. We are on all streaming platforms, all social media. And as always, I'll see you in the funny pages.
The storm begins as the legions march.